What if the people you trusted most turned out to be your greatest threat? After losing her husband, Monica thought her parents' help was a blessing until she uncovered a chilling plot to take her son away forever. Lies, betrayal, and a secret custody scheme threaten to destroy everything she has left. Will a mother's instincts be enough to protect her child from the very people who claim to love him most? You won't believe how far family can go, or what it really takes to fight back. After my husband died, I thought the worst part of my life was behind me. His name was Daniel. He was driving home from work when a truck swerved into his lane. Just like that, gone. I was 35, widowed, and left alone to raise our 8-year-old son, Ethan. I don't remember the first few weeks. It was a fog of casseroles, sympathy cards, and the unbearable silence that followed once everyone went back to their own lives. Except my parents. Donna and Greg. They swooped in like angels at first. They picked Ethan up from school, made us dinners, even helped with bills while I figured out how to go back to work. I told myself I was lucky that not everyone had parents so willing to help. I didn't realize how quickly help could start to feel like ownership. It started subtly. Little comments. My mom would say things like, "Ethan eats so much better when he's at our house," or, "Greg taught him how to ride a bike, not Daniel." My dad would correct me in front of Ethan if I tried to discipline him. "Oh, come on, Monica, don't be so hard on the boy. He just lost his father." At first, I gave them grace. We were all grieving. Maybe they just missed Daniel and were clinging to Ethan as a piece of him. But then the lines kept blurring. They began calling Ethan our boy. Not your son. Not even our grandson. Our boy. They said it so often it started to itch inside my brain. We'll take our boy to the zoo this weekend. Our boy needs more structure. Our boy is safe with us. It was supposed to be a comfort. Instead, it made me feel erased. The real tipping point came on a night when I had to work late. I got home, and Ethan wasn't in his room. No note. No call. Just a text from my mom saying, "We took him for the night." He needed a break. A break? From me? When I called, Donna answered like nothing was wrong. "Sweetheart, relax. He was just feeling off, and we didn't want him alone in that big empty house. We're his stability now." I told them not to do that again. That they needed my permission. My dad just scoffed and said, "You're overwhelmed, Monica. It's natural. Let us help." But I knew what I felt. And what I felt was the ground shifting beneath my feet. That weekend, they asked to take Ethan again. Just overnight, they said. He loves sleeping over. You could use a break. I said yes. And I hated myself for it. But I was tired, mentally, emotionally. I needed space to breathe, and they knew exactly when to offer it. The next day, I texted around 10 a.m. No answer. I called. Voicemail. By noon, I'd texted 6 times and left 3 voicemails. Finally, at 1:42 p.m., my mom called. "Oh honey," she said, her voice trembling. "Greg had chest pains. We're at the hospital. We couldn't bring Ethan home." I asked what hospital. She paused. Just Mercy General. We're in the ER. It's all so chaotic." Something in her tone felt off. Too smooth. Too rehearsed. I grabbed my keys and drove to Mercy General. Greg wasn't there. Never had been. I stood in the ER lobby, heart pounding. I repeated my dad's full name to the woman at the front desk, twice. She typed, checked her screen, frowned, and shook her head. "No one by that name has checked in today," she said. "Are you sure he came here?" I left before I could scream. Outside, in the parking lot, I called my mom again. No answer. I didn't leave a message. I got in my car and drove straight to their house. It was only a 20-minute drive, but it felt like an hour. My hands were shaking on the wheel. I kept running through every awful scenario. What if he had gone to a hospital and they just gave me the wrong name? What if Ethan was with someone else? What if I parked crooked in their driveway and didn't even knock? The door was unlocked. I walked in fast, calling out, "Mom? Dad?" No answer. I turned the corner into the living room and there was Ethan. Sitting on the couch, still in his pajamas, eating dry cereal out of a plastic bowl. The TV was on low. He looked up at me, confused but calm. "Hi, Mommy," he said. "Where's Grandma?" I could barely speak. I knelt down and wrapped my arms around him so tight I thought I'd crush him. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" He nodded. "Yeah. Grandma said Grandpa had to go somewhere and she'd be back soon. She said I should stay here and not open the door." My phone buzzed. A new message from Donna. "Everything's fine now. Don't overreact. Just needed time to think." That was it. I called the police. The dispatcher was calm, efficient. I told her my parents had taken my son under false pretenses and lied about a medical emergency. I didn't even know what to call it: kidnapping? Custodial interference? While I waited for the officers, I got Ethan dressed, packed up his backpack, and told him we were going home. He didn't ask questions. He just looked relieved. 2 officers arrived within 15 minutes. I explained everything: the fake hospital story, the refusal to answer calls, my son's isolation. One officer stayed with me and Ethan, while the other stepped outside to make some calls. When he came back, he said something I'll never forget. "Ma'am, your parents were seen earlier today meeting with a private family court liaison in the city. Do you know anything about that?" My stomach dropped. "No," I said. "Why would they be?" He interrupted gently. "It looks like they've been exploring legal custody options." I could barely breathe. The officer gave me a packet of paperwork: emergency custody affirmation, a referral to a legal advocate, and instructions on how to file a protective order if needed. They couldn't arrest Donna and Greg yet, not without more proof of intent. But the officer didn't mince words. "Start documenting everything." That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the past few months: every overstep, every comment, every time they made me doubt myself as a mother. The next morning, I called Ethan's school to check if anything unusual had happened. That's when the secretary hesitated. She said there was a recent attempt to change Ethan's emergency contact list. Someone had tried to remove me and replace me with my parents. "Did you approve that?" she asked. "No," I said, stunned. There was a long pause. "I thought so. It was your name on the form, but the signature didn't look right." I drove to the school immediately. They still had the document. I stared at the signature and my blood ran cold. It was my name. But I didn't write it. It was a forgery. I sat in my car staring at the forged form, my fingers numb. It wasn't just the signature, it was everything. The handwriting. The phrasing. Whoever filled it out had tried to be me. They even wrote Monica W. instead of my full last name, like I always do. That wasn't a mistake. That was someone who'd studied me. Watched me. Probably stood over my shoulder 100 times as I signed permission slips and homework forms. It was my mother. I could hear her voice in my head: "Don't overreact. Just needed time to think." Think about what? How to erase me from my own child's life. I took photos of the form with my phone and emailed them to the legal advocate the police had referred me to. Her name was Cheryl, and when I called, she didn't sound surprised. "I've worked 3 similar cases this year," she said. Grieving mother, over-involved grandparents, forged documents. "You're not alone, Monica. But you need to act fast." She told me to pull all school records, doctor forms, any paperwork I'd signed since Daniel died. If they forged one form, they might have forged others. She also warned me about something else. If they're trying to prove you unfit, there may be a paper trail you haven't seen yet. That afternoon, I called CPS. I asked if any reports had been filed about me anonymously or otherwise. The woman on the phone hesitated, then said quietly, "There have been two. One in February and one in April. Both months when Ethan had stayed overnight at my parents' house. Both reports claimed Ethan had been neglected, underfed, and emotionally distressed. One claimed he was being left alone for hours at a time while I'd slept off medications. Absolute lies. I'd never been on anything stronger than Tylenol since Daniel died. And Ethan? He was never alone. I worked from home, checked his homework, cooked every dinner. I was grieving, yes, but I was present. I asked who made the reports. Of course, they couldn't say. But it didn't matter. I knew. By the end of the day, I had a digital file the size of a small novel. Screenshots, emails, texts. CPS report summaries. The forged school form. And the cherry on top? A neighbor, an older woman who adored Ethan, sent me a link. It was a review page on a shady website that rented out actors to pose as family members or character witnesses. One of the men who claimed to be a concerned family friend in the CPS reports? He was listed there. Headshot and all. They'd paid strangers to lie about me. I stared at the screen and felt my body go cold. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. It was a heist. They were trying to steal my son slowly, legally, piece by piece. Make me look unfit. Make themselves look like the stable, selfless guardians. And worst of all, they were almost pulling it off. Until I showed up at that hospital. Until I called the police. That night, I sat Ethan down and told him gently that things were going to change. That we wouldn't be seeing Grandma and Grandpa for a while. His eyes filled with tears. But why? Did I do something bad? No, baby, I said, pulling him close. You didn't do anything wrong. They did. He looked up at me and whispered, I heard Grandma say you don't always know what's best for me. Is that true? I felt something crack inside me. No, I said. That's not true. I'm your mom. And my only job is keeping you safe. The next morning, I filed for a protective order. The courtroom was sterile and quiet the morning I filed the emergency protection order. A judge granted a temporary no-contact order within an hour. I left the courthouse gripping that piece of paper like it was a lifeline. It was the first time I truly felt like I was doing something to fight back. That same day, Cheryl helped me file a formal police report citing custodial interference, fraud, and forgery. The officer assigned to the case took it seriously, especially when I handed over the screenshots, the school form, and the actor's profile from the shady witness for hire site. Within 48 hours, Donna and Greg were served with the protection order. I didn't witness it, the officers handled that, but I imagined the look on their faces. Confusion? Denial? Maybe even outrage that their ungrateful daughter would dare fight back. But what came next made my blood boil. They hired a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, a family law attorney with a reputation for representing non-traditional guardians in custody battles. The kind of person you call when you want to look legitimate while pulling the rug out from under someone. And sure enough, just 3 days later, I received notice. They were filing for emergency guardianship of Ethan. Their claim? That I was emotionally unstable and unfit to parent due to prolonged grief, irrational behavior, and ongoing mental decline. They submitted affidavits, sworn statements, from 2 family friends describing me as detached, distracted, and dependent on substances. 2 men I'd never even met. When Cheryl and I ran their names through the actor site again, there they were. Same faces. Different names. Different backstories. We submitted a motion to dismiss their guardianship petition immediately, along with a criminal complaint for perjury and falsification of legal documents. But we weren't done. We subpoenaed the school to testify about the forged form. We pulled Ethan's pediatrician into the case, who confirmed I'd never missed a single appointment. We collected texts from mutual family members who had seen me parenting with nothing but patience and care. Still, The court process was slow. And the stress? Unbearable. Ethan started having nightmares. He'd wake up crying, asking if Grandma was going to come take him away. I had to sit with him every night, reassure him he was safe, that no one was taking him anywhere. One afternoon, I got a call from Donna. She'd used a new number to bypass the restraining order, leaving a voicemail full of thinly veiled threats. "You're tearing this family apart. You don't see what's best for Ethan, but we do. And when the court agrees, we'll forgive you. You'll thank us one day." I sent the message straight to the police. That violation helped our case. Combined with the forgery, the CPS lies, and the fake witnesses, the DA finally stepped in. An investigation opened into possible criminal conspiracy, not just fraud, but attempted custodial interference with malicious intent. Then came the search warrant. They seized documents from my parents' house. And what they found stunned even the detectives. Printouts of old emails between me and Daniel. Photos of Ethan looking sad, all clearly staged. A binder labeled guardianship strategy, with tabs like medical neglect, educational gaps, and character witnesses. One tab even had budget notes, what they'd pay the actors, how they'd justify costs if audited. It was an entire blueprint to steal my son. This wasn't love. This was obsession. That night, I sat in bed holding Ethan while he slept. I watched his chest rise and fall and thought, they underestimated me. I was grieving. But I wasn't weak. And they were about to find out exactly what a mother is capable of when someone tries to take her child. The day I finally confronted my parents, I wasn't the same woman who'd begged them for help 6 months earlier. I was tired, yes, but also sharper, honed by sleepless nights and every awful thing I'd discovered. I met Donna and Greg in the courthouse hallway before the first big hearing. My lawyer stood beside me, clipboard in hand, while my parents clung to each other like they were the ones under threat. Donna tried to play the victim right away. Her voice trembled, eyes wet. "Monica, how could you do this to us? We only ever wanted to help. We're your family, Ethan's only family now." I felt nothing. "You forged my signature. You lied to the court. You tried to erase me from my son's life," I said, voice shaking with anger I refused to swallow anymore. "That's not help. That's betrayal." Greg stepped in, his jaw clenched. "You're not thinking straight. We saw how you've been these last few months. You're not yourself. You left Ethan with us because you needed a break. How many times did you beg for help?" I met his stare. "Needing help isn't the same as being unfit. And you know it." They kept insisting I was unstable, that they had evidence. But every piece they produced fell apart under scrutiny. The character witnesses vanished when they learned they could be subpoenaed. The school principal testified about the forged contact form. The pediatrician provided a letter that described me as a loving, attentive mother coping admirably with unimaginable loss. When they found out about the private school forgery, the enrollment forms with my forged signature in Donna's handwriting, the judge's patience ran thin. My attorney filed for emergency sanctions and pressed for criminal charges. My parents' lawyer tried to pivot, arguing they were only acting out of love, that their desperation clouded their judgment. But the evidence was overwhelming. The court ordered a psychological evaluation, not of me, but of them. In the meantime, the investigation into their finances deepened. It turned out they had funneled money to at least 4 separate actors through untraceable payment apps. Receipts and chat logs told the whole story. There was no way to spin it as a misunderstanding. Donna tried one last time to reach out to me privately, sending a handwritten letter. She begged me not to destroy the family name, swore she'd never forgive herself if Ethan grew up hating her. I tore the letter up without reading it to the end. I realized then that some people don't want forgiveness, they want absolution without consequences. The next few weeks were a blur of motions, hearings, and waiting. I barely ate. Ethan clung to me, quieter than usual, but more trusting. He never asked about Grandma or Grandpa anymore. The silence in our house felt different now. Not lonely. Safe. The district attorney's office informed me Donna and Greg would face charges of attempted custodial interference, fraud, and falsifying legal documents. The judge set a trial date and extended the restraining order to last until Ethan turned 18. For the first time since Daniel's death, I felt hope blooming in my chest. Not for things to go back to the way they were, but for a future I could shape for Ethan, one where he was truly safe. The courtroom was packed the day my parents stood trial. Reporters sat in the back row, their eyes trained on Donna and Greg, who looked nothing like the perfect grandparents they'd pretended to be for so long. Donna clutched tissues she barely used. Greg just stared straight ahead, jaw set, as if stubbornness alone could save him. My lawyer presented everything: the forged school forms, the witness for hire site, the fabricated CPS claims. The prosecution showed the guardianship strategy binder, each tab a chilling reminder of just how far my parents were willing to go. At one point, the judge stopped the proceedings and asked, "Do you understand what you were trying to do here?" Greg's silence was answer enough. Their attorney tried to play the concerned grandparents card one last time, but the evidence was undeniable. The school principal testified about my involvement, the pediatrician described Ethan's health and happiness under my care, and the officers confirmed my parents had lied about the hospital emergency. But it was the actor testimony that destroyed their defense. One of the so-called family friends admitted in court that he'd never even met me or Ethan and had only followed a script Donna sent him. The judge's face hardened as the man described getting paid via anonymous apps and being coached on exactly what to say to CPS. On the last day, I took the stand. I described the months of subtle gaslighting, the terror of not knowing if my child would be taken, the pain of realizing my own parents saw me as an obstacle instead of a daughter. My voice trembled at first, but when I looked at Ethan, sitting with a counselor in the front row, hands folded in his lap, I found my strength. I loved my parents. I needed them after Daniel died. I trusted them with my son. And they used my grief as a weapon. They tried to convince everyone, even me, that I was broken. But I'm not. I'm Ethan's mother, and no one will ever take that from me. The judge granted the permanent restraining order that day. Donna and Greg were found guilty of attempted custodial interference, fraud, and falsification of legal documents. The sentencing hearing was set, and my lawyer immediately filed a civil suit for emotional distress. When we left the courthouse, a reporter asked me how it felt. For a second, I wanted to shout, to rage, to let the world see the cost of their lies. But I just said, my only job is to protect my son. That's what I did. Ethan squeezed my hand. For the first time in a year, I saw a real smile on his face. We went home. I locked the door and looked at my phone. No missed calls, no threats, just silence. The kind I could finally live with. The final court dates felt almost surreal, as if I were living someone else's life. The sentencing came quickly. Donna and Greg were both given probation and community service, but more importantly, the judge made it clear that any future contact with Ethan or with me would mean jail time. The restraining order was ironclad, stretching until Ethan turned 18. But the real blow wasn't legal, it was public. News spread quickly in our town. Our church put Donna and Greg's names on a prayer list for repentance. Their social clubs quietly froze them out. A few people reached out to me with stories of similar betrayals, all of us connected now by scars no one else could see. Winning the civil suit was almost anticlimactic after everything else. The judge ordered my parents to pay damages for emotional distress and legal fees, and they were forced to sell their cherished lake cabin, Donna's pride and joy. The property went fast, a public reminder of what their lies had cost them. I wrote a letter, the one my mom had begged me never to make public. I posted it online, no names, just the facts. The community didn't need the gory details, the truth was enough. I thought I might feel guilty exposing them. I didn't. For the first time in years, I felt free. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Ethan missed his grandparents at first, and sometimes I caught him staring out the window, waiting for a car that would never come. I didn't sugarcoat anything for him. I told him the truth, in pieces, shaped gently for his age. Sometimes people hurt you and say it's for your own good, but it's still wrong. You don't have to let them back in. Slowly, we started building something new. Our home became peaceful. I got my appetite back, learned how to laugh with Ethan again. Some nights, we'd lie in his bed, reading silly chapter books, his head heavy on my shoulder. He stopped asking if Grandma and Grandpa would ever come back. I think he understood more than I ever wanted him to. The biggest change was inside me. The part of me that always second-guessed, always waited for the other shoe to drop, began to trust my own instincts again. I started keeping a journal, not to document evidence, but just to remember how strong I could be. I watched Ethan regain his confidence, make new friends, and talk about the future again. "It's just us, Mom," he'd say sometimes, grinning. "We're good, right?" And I'd smile back. All the grief and anger and betrayal boiled down to the only answer that mattered. We're perfect.